This image was created as a project for this particular video. It's made up of just 4 different images. I find that making a montage is both a creative and rewarding experience because everything about it is down to us. We choose the images, we are in control of the colour harmony, especially the composition, and also the main focal interest. The creation of a montage image isn't an exact science, so we often need to try different images, particularly when we're just getting started. Now this can make a start to finish video tutorial rather long. Don't worry, I have a plan to keep things short. The method that I use is fairly simple and the techniques are quite forgiving. So let me explain how this image began. Now very often I find myself starting this process by looking for an image that has some texture. Here we're looking at the side of an old railway truck. Now as you can see, this image is a smart object opened up through Camera Raw, and at this stage I'm not really sure if this background image is going to work at all. In fact, it did, but that was just pure chance. Now one thing I didn't like about this image was that little gap down at the bottom. Now I actually used AI generative fill, which we looked at in video 40, but also content aware fill would have also done the job in video 39, but to be honest I'm not sure why I didn't think of it at the time. If I just hit Ctrl T and brought up the free transform, held the shift key so I can distort the image, I could have just dragged it down to cover that area at the bottom. On this occasion though, I did choose to use AI generative fill, and you can see the layer it created, and you can see the effect of that as I turn it off and on. Once I had my textured background, I selected an image to drag and drop into my growing layered stack. And of course, because I've dragged it into the top of the layer, of course it's going to cover up everything that's beneath. Now what I tend to do here is to blend this layer with the layers beneath using one of these blend modes. Now this is the part of the process which can take a bit of time, because if I drop down this option here, you can see there's quite a number of them. And I can't give you specific ideas on which ones are going to work. It's going to depend on the images you've chosen. But after looking down myself, darker colour gave me the indication that I could work with these two, because I could see a little bit of the house in the background, and I could also see quite a bit of my textured background, the side of the railway track. But of course what I want to do is to bring forward parts of this, mainly the steel parts, and I can do that using a layer mask. So the next task is to apply a layer mask to the right of the layer I've just drawn in. With the blend mode set to darken colour, I can start to mask this layer to allow parts of this one to show through more prominently. I'll speed up that process just a little bit. Now you can see my cunning plan to speed up the process. You can see I've masked away a little bit on the layer mask on the right here. And if I click the mask, which I've got turned off at the moment, you can see the majority of that is the metal work coming down in these bars on the side of the railway track. And there was a little bit here which was a tree and a little bit of a distraction here. Now over the years there's been a number of times when, if I've got a layer like the house, I may want to bring through a little more detail than is currently showing via the darker colour mode. So what I do under those circumstances, I would make a copy of this layer. I'm going to use Ctrl J, but I don't want this layer mask. I can drag that mask in the bin. because here's a little tip. What I want to do is return this layer to its normal setting, but then I want to apply a layer mask which masks the entire layer away. So what I need is black. So if I hold my Alt key while I click the layer mask, I do get a layer mask applied, but it's automatically flooded with black. Because what I'm going to do now, rather than have a white mask where I paint black, here I just want to reveal the house in various locations. So it's much better to start with the whole of the house removed with the mask, and I can use white just to bring it back in those places where I want it. Now I've sped up the process here, as you can see by the painting that's showing on the layer mask here. If you look at the main image in the center of the screen, as I turn the layer on and off, you can see what I've revealed with that mask. It's not a lot, but it makes quite a bit of difference. Now you may ask the question, how do we know what to reveal? Well, the truth is we don't, and that's part of the trial and error and the creativity of making montages. Now, as you can see here by the change on screen, I've brought in my main centre of interest. I've decided on a person because they generally attract the eye pretty well, and I thought the man would look quite nice between those two metal bars. But after doing a little bit of masking, you can see what the entire image looks like if I turn the mask off. Not very elegant, but we only want him. So he seems to work quite well, but then I had a change of heart. So I made a copy and I flipped the layer over. We do this in the edit and we transform the layer and we just flip one layer, not the entire set of layers. And now I've got my man on the left hand side and I think he works much better there. And you can see the layer mask, it just reveals him from a black mask, and I've allowed his hand to come over the top of that metal bar coming down at an angle. So you can see, I think, or I hope, how montages gradually come together. Now, as you can see, the final image that I introduced into my montage is the sign, an old metal rusty sign which says Lion's Tea. On this particular occasion, it wasn't essential, but because it was a quick and easy selection to make, I made a polygonal lasso selection around the outer edge and just copied the actual shape. But I did feel it needed just a little bit of masking, not a lot, just around the man's hat. If you look at the picture, I wanted the man's hat to be prominent, so I just made sure the mask allowed the hat to show through. With the Lion's Tea advert, I've got that set to a blend mode of lighten, which seemed to work as well as I could find amongst all those other options. While I was making this montage, I did leave it part done overnight, coming back to it the next day. I found this to be a good thing to do because while we're in full creative flow, we can sometimes miss the obvious problem. Give yourself a break and you'll be surprised how many times that break produces a positive result. Sometimes I have found it can be a simple change to what layers we've already used, but other times that break triggers another good idea. Once the image is complete, save a layered version first, then make a flattened copy for final spotting, colour adjustments or shading of the image. Maybe darkening the outer edges and corners. Now I've placed the images I've used here and a few others into a zip folder that you can download from the link below. You're free to use these images to practice making a montage. I'll see you next time.